Welcome back to the Growing Grace podcast. Today's episode is going to be all about procrastination. Now, procrastination is something I struggle with quite a bit. It is something that all throughout school I struggled with, and even now, as an adult, I still struggle with procrastination. It's just one of those things where if there's something I just really don't want to do, I keep putting it off because either I'm scared or I just don't want to do it, or I'm too tired. I make up all these excuses as to why I shouldn't do it right now in this moment. But the other day I was scrolling on TikTok and somebody posted something that really was a huge wake-up call to me, and I figured it would be perfect to do an episode on it because I know procrastination is something a lot of us struggle with. It's something that I'm almost positive I can say that almost everyone, if not everyone, has struggled with at some point in their life. And so the TikTok that I saw said, "Every time I get lazy and tell myself I can just do it tomorrow, I remember the quote that says, 'Procrastination is the arrogant assumption that God owes you another opportunity for what you already had time to do.'" I know I've talked about it on here before, but no day is guaranteed. And if we look at James 4:14, it says, "How do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It's here a little while and then it's gone." And then if we skip to verse 17, it says, "Remember, it is a sin to know what you ought to do and then not do it." And so that verse really just partners really well with what I just read, the quote that I just read. And it just partners really well with that wake-up call that when we are called to do something or when we're supposed to do something, we're not supposed to put it off as long as we possibly can and make up all these excuses as to why we should be able to do it later. When God tells us to do something, we're supposed to do it. And so the type of procrastination I'm going to be talking about in this episode isn't necessarily procrastinating on your homework and not doing it if you're in school, or procrastinating on a chore, although it is better to just get all of those things done. But the procrastination I'm talking about in this episode is the procrastination of things that God has told you to do, of the things that He has called you to do, and that you know for a fact God is the one telling you to do those things. Especially because, like I just read, no day is guaranteed, that our lives here on earth are just like a mist, just like a fog, where one moment they're here, the next they're gone. And so our time is fleeting, and so when God tells us to do something, we shouldn't put it off as long as possible. We should do it now, and we should take hold and be honored that God is telling us to do something, that He's speaking to us in such a way that He has chosen us to go out and complete this task for Him and for His kingdom. And so if I read Proverbs 27:1, it says, "Don't brag about tomorrow, since you don't know what the day will bring." And so once again, that just goes so well with James 4:14, and it just shows that no day is guaranteed. We never know what the next day will hold. We never know how many opportunities God will give us to take what He is telling us to do. That sometimes God gives us an opportunity, and if we don't take it, He'll move on and give it to someone else. And the more we ignore God's voice and the more we ignore His direction, the harder it is for us to hear Him later on. And so it is so important that we don't take for granted the lives that we have and the moments and opportunities that we are given. That if God tells you to do something today, you should do it today. And if He tells you that He wants you to get it done within the week, or if He gives you a time period to do it, or whatever it may be, that we should complete it within that time period. That sometimes God does speak to us and tell us that He has plans for us, but that doesn't mean that we should just slack off or be lazy or procrastinate the things He's telling us to do in the meantime before we achieve the big plans or the ultimate end goal that He has for our lives. Because if we don't do the little steps along the way, we're never going to reach that final destination or that end goal that God has for us. And so it can be really hard to call yourself lazy. It can be something that you never really want to admit about yourself, that it can be really easy to point it out in other people, but it's not always easy to to see it in ourselves or to call ourselves lazy, but there are warnings against it in the Bible. If we read Proverbs 18:9, it says, "A lazy person is as bad as someone who destroys things." And then if I go to Proverbs 13:4, it says, "Lazy people want much but get little, but those who work hard will prosper." And unfortunately, if we are those people that are procrastinating, and if we are those people that make up every possible excuse before we do something, that is us being lazy. Even if we're going out and doing a bunch of other works in the meantime, we're being lazy when it comes to that one task that we know we're supposed to do. It's just like, I know my roommates and I all kind of have this thing where if we have something that we know we need to get done, but we really don't want to do it, we'll clean or we'll find any other possible thing to do before starting what we know we need to get done. So for example, I'm going to go back to homework. When we were in school, we would always find any household chore or anything that we would need to get done, or just literally the most random things that we could do. We would do those over our homework because we just didn't want to sit down and do it. And so when we procrastinated on that homework and we did all those other tasks, yes, it felt good to get those other things done, but ultimately in the back of our minds was still our homework. It was still the task that we knew we needed to achieve and we weren't doing. And so there was the stress that our homework wasn't done yet, but we still weren't doing it. And then when it finally came time to do that homework, we still had to get that task done, and now we just had less time to do it. We felt less prepared in doing it, and we were stressed to see if we could meet the deadline. And so it's the same when God gives us a task. If we go out and we say, "Okay, God, I know you gave me this task to do for your kingdom, but instead I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this for you, and I'm going to do this for you, and I'm going to do this for you," even though you didn't tell me to do any of those things, that task that he did give you is going to eat away at you. It's going to be in the back of your mind, and you're going to remember that it's there. You're going to remember that it's something you still have to do. And ultimately, when it comes time to do it, you're not going to feel prepared. You're not going to feel ready for it because you were putting off what God had told you to do. And it's harder to hear his voice in his direction in that task because you wouldn't listen to him when he told you to do it and do it now. And so it is so important that we remember that God doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. And so if there is something that God has called you to do and it is out of your comfort zone and you're just not ready to do it, you don't want to do it, that's normal. Because God is there with you, and when you say, "Okay, God, I don't know what I'm doing, but I trust you," and you take that step of faith, he will then walk you through and give you a step-by-step as to how to complete the task he has given you. Whereas if you choose to procrastinate on it, you're probably not going to get that step-by-step how to do the task he's given you. And because you didn't listen before, you chose to tune out God's voice. And so when you finally get to doing that task, your ears are off and you can't hear God's voice anymore, and you can't hear the steps he's trying to give you. And we can know that this is true because if I go to Ephesians chapter 5 and read verses 15 through 17, they say, "So be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do." And this just shows that we are wise enough to know what God wants us to do, that when we sit and we take the time to listen to him and he is pointing us in a direction, we have that wisdom of knowing what we're supposed to do. But then we can't act like a fool and not step into what God has called us to do. And that there's even people out there that aren't Christians and they can still hear God calling them home, just like the lost sheep. And so for those people that might be listening out there, this is your sign to not procrastinate giving your life to Christ and being all in for him, because he wants you to come home to him. And like I've read in multiple different chapters and multiple different pieces of scripture, no day is guaranteed. Our time here is fleeting, and so there's no point in living the worldly lifestyle now and waiting to give your life to him. I talk a lot more about that in episode 32 of God's Grace and Light. So if you want to know more about that, I highly recommend watching that Spirit-filled episode. It was an amazing episode, and it just really goes more in depth about why you shouldn't procrastinate giving your life to Christ. And for those people out there that are lukewarm Christians and are half in the world and half in God's kingdom, it explains why you should be all in for Christ. That because our time here is fleeting, we should be doing everything possible for his kingdom. That, as I read before, it is a sin to know what you're supposed to do and not do it. And so when you have that tug at your heart, whether it's a tug to go into missions, whether it's a tug to serve in your church's youth group, whether it's a tug to tithe to the church, whether it's a tug to go to church for the first time, whether it's a tug to dive deeper into the word, whether it's a tug to give up those friends or those bad habits that you have, no matter what it is, those tugs on your heart aren't the devil trying to trick you. That's God trying to call you home. And that's God trying to get you to step into the life that he has planned for you. That we are more precious than rubies or silver. That we are God's masterpieces. And that he doesn't want us to procrastinate. That when he tells us to go, we should be so ready to get up and go. We should forget that we don't know what we'll do when we'll get there. We should forget in excitement that normal people would be afraid of this task. But when we have God by our side, we should never want to procrastinate. We should be honored that he has chosen us. We should get up and run as far and as fast as we can towards him. And that when he tells us to do something, it should be an exciting moment, not a scary moment. It should be something that you should want to get it done right then and there. That if God tells you to go pray for someone, you don't question it, you don't doubt it, you get up and you go pray for them. If God tells you to sell all your stuff and move to a different country and become a missionary, you should get the ball rolling and see if your church will send you, or see how you can make that possible. Because when God tells you to do something, his timing is perfect. He's never going to tell you to go do something at the wrong time. He's never going to say, I want you to go do this, but it's really not the right time, so you're going to fail at it. When God tells us to go do something, it's because it's his perfect divine timing and it's perfect divine plan that he has for us. That he doesn't owe us anything, but he wants to give us everything. And that is why it is always his perfect timing. It is always, always, always the right moment. When he tells us to go, we go. And if we stumble, it's okay, because he'll be there to pick us up. But we just have to make sure we're listening to him and listening to his voice the whole time, no matter what. Because when, like I said so many times, when we procrastinate, that his voice goes away. It becomes harder to hear. We have our ears covered and we can't hear him anymore. But it's our own hands that are covering our ears instead of taking them off and choosing to listen to him. That is why it is so important to not procrastinate when you hear from God. It is so important to not try to put it off until tomorrow, or to put it off until later and to make up all those excuses. Because sometimes the task God can give you can also be for someone else and not just yourself. For example, if God tells you to go pray for someone, that might be the moment they accept Christ. Sometimes it is so important that you don't procrastinate because someone else's eternity could be on the line. That you could be the person to tell them about Jesus, and that you could be the person that leads them to Christ, and then their tomorrow doesn't happen. That you could be the one that leads them to God. You could be the last person to talk to them. And it might be a grim thing to talk about. However, there are so many people out there that don't know Jesus. And when God tells you to do something, even if it's just an act of kindness, a random act of kindness towards someone, it could be the thing that leads them to Christ. And if they don't know Jesus, their their tomorrow isn't promised, just like those of us that know Jesus, our tomorrow isn't promised either. And that even if God has promised you a future, like I said, if you choose to procrastinate all of the things and still expect to get that promised future, you're going to be sadly mistaken. Because if you have that promise from God that you're going to have a future, and He promised you this thing in this life, He promised you something in this life, and you choose to just ignore the steps along the way to get there, He can't give you that promise until you're ready for it. And when you ignore His voice, you're showing Him you're not ready for it. And so it is so important that no matter who we are, whether we're Christian, whether we're not Christian, to listen to God's voice, because He talks to us all. He is always talking. It's just us that has to tune in to listen. Because no matter who we are, no day is guaranteed on this earth. And so instead of sitting and saying, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, I'll do it next week. Oh, I'll do it the week after that. Oh, I'll do it next month. Or I'll wait until this big thing in my life happens and then I'll do it. But none of that is guaranteed. So my challenge for you all this week is to think about that thing that you've been procrastinating on. No matter what it is, because I can almost guarantee there is something in each and every person's life. You've been procrastinating. You've heard from God, but you're procrastinating on it because you're too scared or you don't want to take a misstep. My challenge for you all is to reflect on that. To maybe even you don't know what it is, but ask God. Say, God, what have I been procrastinating on in my life? What have you called me to do that I have been too scared to take a step into? Just sit there and talk to Him and ask Him. And open your ears and listen to what He tells you. And when He tells you you've been procrastinating on something, say, no, I haven't. Don't get all defensive. Just say, I'm sorry that I was procrastinating on that. Help me to no longer procrastinate. What do you want me to do? And just sit and have that honest conversation with God. Be open with Him. And then take that step of faith. Whatever it may be, whatever you are procrastinating on, go do it. And ask God to direct you along the way, because I promise you it will be worth it. So thank you all so much for watching this episode, and I will see you all next week. Bye!